really spent 10 years since Black Rock sitting with that and thinking about the kind of director I want to be and the way I want to lead a set. And with Mack and Rita, I led with kindness and gratitude and respect and humility. And I think that there is nothing more powerful than someone saying, I don't know, let's figure that out together.
This episode is brought to you by the best-selling book, Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. Learn more at filmbizbook.com. I'd like to welcome to the show, Katie Aselton. How you doing, Katie?
Hey, I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been watching you since the days of the Puffy Chair.
So you had to watch me get old, right?
Yeah. I hate to tell you, we all do it. We all do it. It's something that is unfortunate or better. It depends.
I just happened to do it on camera.
I was going to say that's so interesting. Like my kids see some videos of me when I was a kid, like when I was younger, and they've seen pictures of me younger, but they literally see their, you and Mark just grow old. better, I would say.
Yes. We just evolve. We're evolving.
Exactly. So no, I'm a huge morning show fan. I love the morning show. I love the morning show. It's such a great show. So my first question to you, Katie, is how and why in God's green earth did you want to get into this insanity that is called the film industry?
Isn't it weird? I know. I grew up in Maine on the coast, like past the tourist parts of Maine, like real Maine. And it wasn't a town where people left to go to Hollywood. So it wasn't like I was following in the footsteps of anyone else I knew. I just got a wild hair that this was what I was meant to do. And I had like just big dreams that I kind of kept to myself for a lot of my early years. And finally I couldn't keep them in anymore. I don't know. I'm like the kid who, and look, I think we all do this, but I was definitely the kid who in everything I watched, like put myself in. I'm like a super empath. And so I would like, things like really got me. And I would really just throw myself into every story. And my siblings were all much older than me. So I was essentially kind of an only child living in like a really rural area. So my sense of imagination was always very full. And I don't know. I don't know. That's what lit me up very early, but then had no opportunity for that. Like if you look in my high school yearbook, like I'm in the drama club. There were no productions.
So what does a drama club do that has no productions? Just hang around?
A yearbook picture every year. I don't know. It was the weirdest thing. And the bummer thing is that we're the drama program, like they used to put on productions. I think they put on productions after I left. It was just my 4-year stint, like nothing.
Wow.
It was dark at Narraguegas High School.
Wow. So obviously you've set out into the university. You say, hey, I want to be an actress.
Yeah.
I want to get to the film industry. And then obviously Hollywood just called and said, hey, what would you like to do?
Oh, anything you want, baby. What do you need? Let me help you.
How can I help you? That's, I'm sure, what you got. So what was the stage from when you want the dream?
Look,
did you go to New York? Did you go to LA? Where did you go?
I went to Boston.
Obviously I think the third biggest production offer in the country.
So my family, my parents, God bless them, were like, you need to go to school in New England for at least 2 years. And I think their thought was, I would fall in love with a program or a boy or the city or just forget that I kind of thought maybe I wanted to move to LA to be an actor. But I didn't. And while I was in Boston, I went to BU. In my denial of my dreams and my sort of need to be perceived as like a serious like contender in the world, I told my parents I wanted to go into journalism. I was like, that's the closest I think I can get. There's a camera involved. I'm still like a personality. And so I applied and and got into Boston University, which has a fantastic journalism program that I absolutely hated. But I read Howard Stern's book and I was like, this is going to be great. Not for me, because I actually just wanted to be Holly Hunter and not actually a real journalist. So I took acting classes on the side and really, really loved it. And like kept looking at my clock and was like, all right, guys. And we're at the end of the 2 years. And you promised. And they stuck by their word and they did it. And at 19, I moved out not knowing anyone in Los Angeles. And I scoured the pages of Backstage West as early actors did.
As you do.
Before the internet. And I found a play and I sent in my headshot and I got a play that was in Sunland. Now, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Southern California.
Yeah, Sunland. It's just a bit out. It's a bit out of LA. It's just a little bit out of LA.
And north, and there's nothing there. It's like industrial parks. But I landed a play at a place called Playhouse of the Foothills. And
hold on, that sounds like a place where a horror movie starts. The Playhouse of the Foot. It sounds like something where a horror movie would start.
No, and if you saw it, it definitely looks like a place where a horror movie should take place. They didn't even give me the full script. Like I just got my scenes, but I was like in it. I loved it. I was so excited. My college roommate came out to visit, and this is where the story gets a little sensational, but I'm promising you right now, this is all true.
Okay.
So she came out, we were 19, we didn't have fake IDs. So we were going to go out to celebrate. What were we going to do? We were going to go to Mel's Diner on Sunset to celebrate, get some strawberry shortcake. So we did. And while we were there, I look up, we were sitting outside, I look in at the windows and I was like, oh my God, it's that actor. It's that Dracula dude. Like, what is his name? I can't remember his name. And Rita's like, my roommate was like, James Woods. And I was like, yeah, it's James Woods.
Dracula, dude. He never played Dracula. Did he?
Didn't he? I don't know. That's how it went
Okay, fair enough.
I think he did.
We'll have to look it up. I'm not sure if James Woods played Dracula.
In my head at 19, I was like, he played Dracula. I think he did. Anyhow, I was like, I don't know, but he's looking at us and I think he's going to come over and talk to us. And she was like, no, what does he want? He doesn't want to talk to us. And I was like, I don't know, but he's walking to the table right now. And he was like, hey, are you an actor? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm trying to be. And he was like, well, my name's Jimmy. My friend here's a manager and he thinks you have a good look. And through that manager, I ended up getting my first agent. And that is how my career was born.
So you were discovered. You were discovered in Mel's Diner. Is that the true story?
Diner. Yeah, like it was 1949. Like I was, yeah.
That's amazing. That's an amazing origin story.
By an ultimate scumbag.
But hey, welcome to Hollywood.
Listen, you just got to find ways to just make those stories work for you.
So then, all right. So now you have an agent, you have a manager, and then how did you get involved with this very big budget film, Puffy Chair? It was at least $100 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yes, it was. I mean, all the financing for that movie came from Mark's parents.
By the way, what was the official budget of that film? Because there's a lot of myth about that film. Do you remember?
Now we can say I think it was like 20,000.
Yeah, something like that, right? Yeah, that's what it sounds
really
like. Yeah.
Low, but it's so much more than the budget of my first film, The Freebie, which was 10,000.
So you have one up on Mark on that.
I do. So I spent a couple of years in LA, like really like putting myself out there, auditioning, getting some crap roles that I really wasn't great in and didn't love, but I knew I loved doing it. So it was at that point, a couple of years in, that I was like, I'm actually going to go to theater school. I had started dating Mark already. Mark was in an indie rock band. at the time.
And really quickly for everyone listening, because just in case they don't know, you're married to Mark Duplass, who is the director of Puffy Chair and many other independent films.
The Duplass brothers.
Yes, and half of the Duplass brothers as well, Jay and Mark. So yeah, just so everybody knows who we're, because we just keep saying Mark, like you and I know who it is.
Like everyone knows. I think anyone who's listening to your podcast is gonna they know.
No, but just in case.
Your listeners. So we had been dating. He was an indie rock guy, not a filmmaker, not in movies at all. And while we were dating, they did their short movie, This Is John. Mm-hmm. And then after that, while I was in school in New York, we did the short Scrapple. And that went to Sundance. Both of those went to Sundance. And so then the day after I finished my theater school program, we went into production on the Puffy Chair. And the
rest, as they say, is history. So I have to ask you, because, during that time, I mean, there was obviously that film movement that, which I know a lot of the filmmakers in that world don't like to use the word mumblecore, but because it was coined by some journalists, but for lack of a better term.
Ew.
I'm sorry?
Gross journalists.
Exactly. So, but during that time, there was a group of filmmakers doing this kind of style of filmmaking. Yeah. And looking back at those kind of films, when you were Puffy Chair and Mark and Jay and Lynn Shelton and all that, they were just such huge inspirations for me for my first feature that I did in, I don't know, a few years ago. But the thing that was interesting about that movement of filmmaking, it was just very run and gun. It was shot with video cameras. I have to ask you, because you had been at least in productions at this point as an actress, so you're on the set of Puffy Chair. What do you think as an actress going, is this going to work? Like, there's no lighting. It's kind of raw. It's what did you think about that?
It was really interesting because, in the early years in our relationship, Mark would see me in LA with my friends who were all actors who were out of work. And he's like, I don't understand why you guys just don't grab a camera and make something. And I was like, oh, babe, that's cute. That's not how it's done. Okay. You need a studio, you need a trailer, you need, it was just an idea, because that is what we were told was always just how it was done. And it's because it had to be that way back in the days when you were shooting film, right? But right around this time is where everything started to change with technology, and things became so much more accessible and affordable. And God, you look back at some of those early mumblecore movies and they're garbage. They look so bad.
Some of Joe Swansburg stuff, I look back, I'm like, how did that get released?
I know, but at the time, no one cared, because you were getting cameras in the hands of young artists. And so It was so exciting to hear and see young voices at work. And so it was, yes, there were definitely moments on Puffy Chair and Scrabble and This Is John where I was like, this is never gonna fly. But also there's something so incredibly freeing in first off, not kind of knowing the rules that you don't even know you're breaking, right? So there's that whole idea of know the rules before you break them, or not, or just go from the gut and make a piece of art that you're excited about with people you love. And by the way, for anyone looking to go do this, you absolutely should, because even if it fails and doesn't go anywhere, you learn so much. So as long as you're not, bleeding money doing it, you should absolutely be getting out there with your friends with a camera and going and making some fun stuff.
And the technology today is so much more advanced than what was going on. You're shooting mini DV. I shot my first film on mini DV, DVX 100A, if you want to geek out a little bit. Panasonic.
I want to say that might have been what we did Puffy Chair on. Yeah,
it was it was the first time you could get a film look out of a real.
And that is very loose.
But at the time,
I don't look.
But at the time, it was a 24p camera. It looked gorgeous for its day, because all you had is the 30. You had video cameras comparatively, so it's beta, Canon, or oh my god, it looks like film. So
the deal with like with Puffy Chair, no lights. We had no
None.
crew. We had one guy who did sound and like would occasionally hold a sheet up over like harsh light. It was all we had.
You just run and gunned it. So that was the thing, because I always wanted to ask actresses and actors who were in those early movies, like, I mean, before it was a thing, and you were there at the beginning of it, you had to go like this. Am I wasting my time? Am I just doing this because I love Mark? Like,
And I'll also say, like, but you have those moments in there where you're like, oh, it feels really good.
it's raw. It was raw. It was,
Yeah,
and
there were some moments in the Puffy Chair that I still look back on, and like, actors talk about like, oh, it's in the flow, but like you have those moments and you're like, that was one of the more authentic moments I've ever had as an actor.
yeah, and it's really interesting to go back and look at those films, because there is this kind of kinetic, raw energy to them, and even though they're technically not sound at all,
They look
like,
terrible, but their hearts are so pure, and that
right. And it completely goes through, and it is pretty remarkable. And of course, you named it something so marketable like the Puffy Chair, which I mean,
when you want to know what a movie is about just by hearing the title.
It's about a puffy chair. It's about. I remember during those years, I was hearing the rumbles of the Puffy Chair, and I was like, "What the hell is the Puffy Chair?" And I'm like, "Why is this movie?"
And you're like, "Oh, it's actually a Puffy Chair." Okay.
And I remember thinking to myself before, because it wasn't pre-internet, obviously, but it was internet light, like the. Yeah, early internet. So it wasn't like there was a lot of information out there about the movie. So I remember hearing about it. Like, there was no YouTube yet. 2004, 2005 is when YouTube started. So the trailer wasn't out.
No, there wasn't. I don't think we had a trailer
until years later.
Yeah, until like finally, eventually, someday it ended up on Apple. And that was probably some very sweet person who just like cut it together for fun.
Now, why? I mean, when the movie came out, it went to Sundance, and were you surprised at the reaction? Like, I mean, that's the question. It was like, did you know it was going to be a hit? I knew you didn't know, but it's so overwhelming. The reality.
Yeah, I will say in the test screening, when we were testing Puffy Chair, I cried because I was like, this is awful. I had also never, as an actor, had never been privy to a test screening, right? So when moments fall flat, when things aren't playing well, and I never should have been in that room. Thank God I was. Now that I'm making movies, I'm so happy. I know what it is. But my God, I was like, this is awful. I never should have done this. It might end our relationship. This is a real stinker.
Did you have a conversation with him about this afterwards?
Yeah, and he was like, "Babe, it's a test screening. You're asking people to critique the movie. They're there to criticize and to make it
beat
better.
It up.
So
yeah,
you got to tear it down to build it back up again." And it was an early test screening at Two Boots Pizza in the Lower East Side.
And I can imagine, I'm assuming technically it was sound, very technically sound.
I'm sure it sounded and looked amazing.
The color grading alone was fantastic.
But then what I will say is that experience to the next time I saw it, because then I said I would refuse to watch any more cuts of the movie until it was done. The next time I saw it was when it premiered at the library at Sundance, and it played to a full theater. And when that Death Cab for Cutie song comes on and the van is pulling through the tunnel, I just had this moment where everything just froze. And I was like, oh, I think this might work. You could feel the energy in the room. But the interesting thing about that screening was that I had never seen Puffy Chair as a funny movie, because I was pouring my heart into it, and it was about heartache, and you're watching this couple fall apart. And as at some point in the movie, I think it's in the hotel scene, maybe I haven't seen this movie in 100 years, but I think it's in the hotel room where I'm I'm having a complete emotional breakdown and I'm sobbing and I'm like, give me a number. I just want to know. And the whole audience laughs. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, oh, it is funny because there's nothing else. As an audience member, you're so uncomfortable and can relate so much and you connect. And it was in that moment I was like, oh, I get it. And I also get what I can do. And I get like that particular type of humor of like really dissecting like human discomfort. Like that something clicked in me. It was really amazing. And then like everything changed after that. I got signed by, at the time it was William Morris, and like on stage at the premiere, and we moved right out to Los Angeles from there, and we've been here ever since Puffy Chair premiered.
So then from that point on, your career kind of took off.
Oh yeah, it was so easy. After that, it was just everything happened.
Everything just when they backed up the money
in every television show and in every movie, it's like hard to figure out like when to take a break because I'm just always working.
So when they pulled up the money truck and did they back up into the front yard?
It's like all beep beep, dump it in. No. It's funny. It didn't work that way.
It never does. It never does. Even for Mark and Jay, they had to hustle.
You got to really work at it and still bust your ass and find who you are as an artist and decide what kind of artist you want to be. And then I don't know. That's like all part of it. Right?
So when you made your first feature, The Freebie, which when I was watching, I was like, oh, this is obviously taking a cue from Puffy Chair, arguably much more sound technically, I have to say. If I'm gonna call it out,
Mark will be the first one to tell you that I lean into cinema a little bit more than he does. He's like, I don't give a shit. I just give me a performance. That's all I care about. I literally don't care what's in the frame. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm like, I kind of want it to look pretty.
Exactly. So when I was watching, I'm like, definitely there's an inspiration from that core, the mumblecore movement, but it's definitely a little bit more cinematic. But I was watching scenes, I was like, oh, there's no lights here. Like this is all natural. This is all natural. It's and then you had Dax Shepard in as your co-star, who's absolutely wonderful. And I mean, he was in 2010.
It was pre-Parenthood.
Yeah, so he wasn't Dax Shepard yet. He was known.
He was without a paddle, Dax Shepard.
Oh, punked.
And punked Dax Shepard. He was there, which is like, I really take great pride in being like this, like the first step for him into like him really showing the world who he is as an actor. And I really hope he gets back into more of that kind of acting. He's a beautiful actor.
No, he is. He's excellent actor. Even when in Parenthood, he was.
Oh my God. Well, that's the thing. I think, and he had said he took Freebie in an effort to like get into natural acting. I was like his like training ground. Like he was just like, he was working his stuff out on me, which like, thank God he did, because he finished shooting our movie, all of 8 days that we shot that movie, and went right up to San Francisco to go shoot Parenthood.
And he's done okay since then. He's done
all right.
He's done all right for himself. He's done all right. He's done all right for himself. No question about it. Now, the one thing I always love asking directors, and something that's not talked about as much as it should be, is the politics on set. That there's a lot of politics that young directors, and especially female directors who I've had on the show, they have a whole other set of things that they have to deal with on set. Is there any advice you can give young directors, both male and female, coming up about politics on a set? And when I say politics of set, there's obviously the politics of studio executives and investors and producers.
I'm not familiar with. I can't speak to that at all.
But with even crew people who push back on you, don't believe in your vision, or have been doing this for 30 years, and they're like, "Who's this kid?" And that, how do you deal with that? And what advice do you have for kids or young directors coming up?
Yeah. I mean, please, I want the 60-year-old who's making their first movie
to deal with the politics of the set.
Deal with the politics on set. Because the truth of the matter is I have had two different experiences. And look, Freebie was a unicorn all on its own. Like that was like felt like film camp. Like it was a very like Cassavetes-esque, like just really warm environment where it was so collaborative. And I don't think I will ever have anything like that again, where I felt fully supported from every single person who was in my home shooting that movie. It felt like such a safe space. My second film with BlackRock, I definitely went in with a much heavier sense of imposter syndrome. And I think I wrongly so balanced that out with like a strong persona of like, no one's going to push me around. And I didn't treat people, I think, the way I want to treat people moving through this world. Like I very much regret the way I handled situations. And I think part of it came from insecurity and part of it came from stress. And we were under so many, like the physical elements of that movie were so hard. We were freezing cold and wet and bug bitten and, you know, over budget. And all of those things, I think, led to me not being the leader that I really wanted to be. And then with Mack and Rita, I went into that having really spent 10 years since BlackRock sitting with that and thinking about the kind of director I want to be and the way I want to lead a set. And with Mack and Rita, I led with kindness and gratitude and respect and humility. And I think that there is nothing more powerful than someone saying, I don't know, let's figure that out together. I don't know, what do you think? There is a reason why you hire the incredibly talented people around you, and that is to support you with their knowledge of their job, right? I don't know how to be a cinematographer. There's a reason why the camera's not in my hands, because I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to hang a light. I don't know what it takes for, you know, everything that goes into production design. I hire people who are wonderful at their jobs. And I think the biggest job for a director is to trust in those people and to thank them for their work. And it is still a collaboration. It's still a conversation. You can absolutely weigh in on things. But I think that if you can end every day with thank you so much for everything you did today. I couldn't be doing this without you. I think that would be my biggest piece of advice.
You know, what's so interesting is when I watched BlackRock and watched Mack and Rita, it's you could feel the energy difference. I mean, they're two different kinds of story, but you can just feel, you know, because in BlackRock you're one of the actresses, you can kind of sense that. And I have to ask, when I was watching, I was like, man, this must have been a super easy set. I mean, it should have just flowed. Everything worked nicely on BlackRock. There's no issues whatsoever. Because you're running around on an island, and I'm like, all
exteriors on the coast of Maine.
I mean, it just
nearest rental house is 6 hours away.
Right.
So when your water housing fails, like
you're done.
They're like, we were supposed to have cameras in the water with us. Didn't have any, like things like there was no shaking and jiving on that movie. Like it was all or nothing.
The opposite of Freebie.
The complete opposite. And sitting in that headspace for 2 years, the time that it takes to make that movie, really, like, it did a number on me.
Yeah, because I mean, it was your apocalypse now in many ways because you were stuck out on an island.
Exactly.
I mean, it must have been,
and I was the one having 10 heart attacks.
I mean, it must have been brutal because as I'm watching it, I'm like, this is not easy on a massive budget. I'm like, even if it was $100 million budget, you're still in the elements. Anytime you're shooting in the elements, even a scene or two, you shot most of that film in there, and you're running around.
The only interior shot of that movie is in the car in the beginning when the two girls, when Lake and Kate are in the car. It is the only time that there is an interior shot.
So when you were prepping that film, I have to ask you, did it come up? They're like, hey guys, we're going to be shooting outside. Can we control, because you're at the whim of weather and the sun going in and out.
Tides.
Tides.
That's what we never considered. Fucking tides that go in and out twice a day.
Oh my God.
It was
So how do
came out of that where like we bit off more than we could chew with this one. And it was, I'm still so proud of what we made ultimately, but man, it was hard.
So how as a director do you keep morale going? And by the way, you have the added bonus of being an actress in the film that you're directing in this insanity. So I can imagine.
I think I misstepped is I focused the most on morale of the cast. And I did not, because we were also in two separate camps. Like the crew was all held up in one house, and the cast and the Adela Romansky and I were in another house. And so I was like so
above the line, below the line.
Like, I need to keep the actors happy, not realizing that the crew was like ready to
mutiny.
They were going to.
So that is, if everyone listening, if you can at all help it, definitely don't separate above the line and below the line on an independent film. Try to bring them all together. And
in my head, I was like, it's all going to work if we can all just get through these 23 days. Like, it's all going to, like, I promise you, it's all going to work. But like when you're getting $100 a day and getting the shit kicked out of you and like eaten alive by bugs, like it's hard to remember that it's all ultimately like financially going to work. You know, it was hard.
No,
it was a great lesson, and I hope for your listeners.
Yeah, I hope so.
You guys can take with you.
I mean, look, I've shot in nature, and it sucks. It's like you just can't control when that sun goes behind a cloud. We got to wait, or are we going to try to light it? Are we going to, because we don't have the budget to actually set up a nice 10K up and turn it on and off to match. It's just brutal. So when I was watching this, I'm like, I know she didn't have the biggest budget on this. This is her second movie, and she's running around on an island. Oh, in Maine.
Really naked. Like it was naked and afraid.
It was naked and afraid. It was the pilot for Naked and Afraid. That's exactly.
Every time we hit a thing, you just can actually crank it up a notch, and that's where we were. It was
wow.
Like looking back on it, like glad I had that experience, but holy cow.
Wow. Now, you've gone through a bunch of stuff in your career, and you've gone through your journeys. Is there anything that you wish someone would have told you at the beginning of your career? If you can go back in time and talk to yourself and go, look, I know you want to be an actress, and that's all good. We're going to do that, but keep this in mind.
The one thing that I would say is like, and I mean, it really speaks to your podcast, is like, never stop hustling. You got to just like, I will forever be so upset at myself for the way I operated post Puffy Chair. I was like, I just had a movie that was a hit in Sundance. Like, I'm fine. I let Mark and Jay go to every film festival, and I was like, I'm going to do pilot season. I missed every opportunity to meet filmmakers, to get in those conversations. And that was such a loss. Like, I'm so bummed that, and it changed the narrative, right? And the narrative became like, Mark put his girlfriend in the movie, and it's like, well, no, I'm actually like, I'm an actor. I've been doing this longer than he's been doing it. But like, because I wasn't there, I wasn't a part of the narrative, So
someone else wrote the narrative for you.
Someone else wrote the narrative. So that would be my piece of advice to my younger self, is like, don't let anyone else write the narrative. Like, keep the pen in your hand at all times.
Do you think
that doesn't mean, sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
Doesn't mean to be utterly obnoxious and to be that person who's constantly like trying to shove the door open. But it just means like, say yes to opportunities and never think that you are at a point where you are too good to whatever that thing is. For me as an actor, it's like, I still put myself on tape for everything that I'm excited about. Like, I am not too good for that. I don't care. I'll do it. And for, as far as like putting Mack and Rita in the world, I want to say yes to every opportunity to talk to anyone, because this is my moment now, and I don't know when I'm going to get this moment again.
And that's something that people don't realize is like, when you're directing, I take it, anytime I walk on set, I'm like, oh, I'm so happy to be here. You know, unless you're Ridley Scott and you're directing every single day of your entire life for the last 40 years, generally people don't get that opportunity. So when you get the opportunity, as artists, directors are the one artist that we rarely get to perform our art.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that to any like actors feel the same way. At least a lot of times directors are creators of their own art, right? So at least then you have some semblance of control in your path. Whereas actors, so often we are left to the mercy of others, like making the call, making a decision, like asking permission to do what we do. And so, look, I think the more we can self-generate and at least just keep our idle hands busy. But even, directors, I think, have a little bit of an easier time generating things for themselves, but it's hard. It's deceptive, right? Like, the work it's few and far between as you move through the world.
And when you were saying that you didn't take advantage of all those conversations after Puffy Chair and you were just like, I'm going to go do pilot season, was that ego? Were you just like, I've arrived, I don't need to do this?
100%. It was young student ego. And not really understanding the business that well. I mean, I'm still the girl from Maine who, like, I wasn't raised in this. Like, I didn't have anyone really guiding me to tell me, this is like, Mark and Jay and I sort of came, and, my previous group of friends in Los Angeles were all living very different lives, and they didn't understand the Sundance of it all, right? They were like, that's so crazy. And in their minds, they were also like, she made it. Yeah. But like, Jeremy Sisto on a TV show doesn't understand, like, Katie Aselton in a Sundance movie. It's like just two very different worlds. And so I had no one to look to be like, what do you think I should do right now?
There was no podcast back then to tell you.
Oh my God. Really could have been podcast.
I would have killed for this podcast 10, 15 years ago. Could you imagine having all this information, having these kind of really candid conversations? I mean, it would have been massive to be able to have this.
It's so awesome to have something that just demystifies something that we grew up like putting on a pedestal, right? That it felt so unattainable. It felt so like, we grew up looking at directors like Spielberg and just being like, how does he do it? But like, what if he actually told us?
I've had the pleasure of talking to some of these kind of gods, these like filmmaking gods. I'm trying to get Steve on the show. I call him Steve because but
I saw him one time. I had a meeting at DreamWorks and he just walked in the door, and I was like, the only thing I could say is he looks exactly like Steven Spielberg. And I know that's so weird, but like he looks like he like had the vest. He had like I was like, whoa, no, you are absolutely Steven Spielberg.
It's a uniform. It's the Steven Spielberg uniform.
Yeah.
You know what? Can you imagine? And I've talked to so many people who've worked with Steven and had businesses with him and stuff. What's it like being someone like that in certain circles? I mean, he could walk around. He's so famous and he's such a known person around the world, but he's not Brad Pitt. Like, he can go off.
He looks just like Steven Spielberg.
Right. So the point is, like, every time he walks into a room and there's a filmmaker in there, they all had the same reaction you did. Like, how do you, and I've talked to people like, how does he deal with it? He's like, he's just really nice, man. He's just really nice and pleasant.
Kind human. I think there are people who are not quite so kind, but I think
in this business, stop it.
I know, it's shocking.
Stop it.
I know.
Next, you're going to say there's egos in Hollywood.
I know. I'm not the only one, it turns out, who has an ego.
So I had the pleasure this morning to watch your new film, Mack and Rita, and I absolutely adored it. It's so much fun. And in the beginning of the movie, you guys shot in Palm Springs, and I just left LA. I moved to Austin about a year ago. Man. And right before I left, I went to Palm Springs for the first time. And that's where the devil lives. I don't know if you know that. The devil actually has a home in Palm Springs. It was 119 when I went. I've never been in 119. You're
not meant to go in the summer months. I don't quite know you were thinking?
I went to Joshua Tree, and then we're like, hey, we're close to Palm Springs. Let's just go check it out. But there's human beings walking the streets and not bursting into flames. So I felt like just yelling at them, like, what's wrong with you people? Like, don't you understand what's happening?
Heat. They love themselves.
So as I was watching those scenes that you shot, I was just like, when did they shoot this? Because it had to have been honest.
It was March. It was hot, but not as hot as it could have been.
So we were in the 90s, hundreds?
Yeah. It was probably like 90. And honestly, like, it was fine. We were okay.
Okay, yeah. Because I was like, poor Diane Keaton.
No one died.
All right, so tell me about the movie. Tell me what the movie's about.
The movie is really ultimately about being your truest form of yourself at any age, right? This is a really hard movie to give like a one-line synopsis to. So that's my one-liner, right?
That's your pitch? That's your elevator pitch?
It's like, be your true self at any age.
And the thing
longer pitch.
Okay, please tell us the longer pitch.
Longer pitch is a story about a 30-year-old woman named Mack who finds herself living a very inauthentic life. She has friends who are all very hip, trendy, and with it, yet she connects more to the older women in her life. She was raised by her grandmother, and she really feels like she is a 70-year-old woman trapped in the body of a 30-year-old. So while on this wild bachelorette weekend in Palm Springs with her girlfriends, she is just dying to lay down and get away from it all. So she tucks herself into a side tent that has a regression pod in it. And she doesn't care that it's a regression pod. She's going to lay down. And in that pod has a bit of a mental breakdown and really screams that she is a 70-year-old trapped in a 30-year-old's body. And sure enough, she comes out Diane Keaton. And
which is very big, which is very big style. Like Tom Hanks, big. Totally. It's beautiful.
But it was so fun to like then watch this character have a 70-year-old woman have to live the life of a 30-year-old with the obligations of the 30-year-old. She's an influencer. She's a writer. Like, she just still has to live that life. And it turns out, you know, our girl Mack really confused age with wisdom. And the truth is she didn't want to be old. She just wanted to be her. And how do we get back to ourselves?
A much better pitch than the first one, I have to say.
All right. It's so fun.
It is. No, but it takes a minute to bring it out because, and you know, just that Pilates scenes alone was brilliant.
Oh man.
I mean, that must have been. So you're working with this young upstart, Diane Keaton. What is it like introducing Diane Keaton to the world?
Oh my God. I'm going to be so excited for people to see what she can do.
What's it like working with a living legend? As a director, how do you approach giving her notes and directing a scene? How did you work with her?
Say, like, it truly, someone at some point was like, oh, you're directing Diane, like dream come true. And I was like, no one didn't dare to dream that big. Like, look at what I'm doing. This is insane. Who dares to dream? Like, I'm from a town of 300 people. From a school that didn't have a drama program.
For 4 years.
For 4 years. I was in a drama club with no production. So it is a real, like, even like on the eve of like putting this movie out into the world, I am still pinching myself that is my reality, that I get to work every day with her. And the truth of the matter is that she is just an absolute fucking delight. Like, she is one of the reasons why she's so great in this movie is because she is hands down like the most authentic person you could ever possibly want to meet. The Diane that we have known and fallen in love with as audience members, like for decades, is exactly who she is. That is Diane. Those quirks, the idiosyncratic, like wild wackiness, the insecurities, the heart, like the humor, all of that is wrapped up in Diane, and it's all right there. She is like vulnerable and real and fun and self-effacing, and it's just like she is a true delight. And working with her I was really expecting are prepared anyways. I think a lot of actors, never mind actors who are in their 70s and have been doing this for 40 years, 50 years, you expect them to be very set in their ways, that they're going to come in, they're going to give the performance they're going to give, and no one's going to tell them any different, right? And Diane was not that at all. She was so open and like game and ready to play, and always wanted to do more physical comedy. And
Yeah.
it was just, I am so grateful for what she brought every day.
And I mean, just again, I'll go back to the Pilates scenes. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant what she did in that you could just see the mastery of timing and comedy, and how she's able to, like, she's a master of physical comedy. She really is.
I know. And she doesn't get to do it, which is like crazy to me. I feel like I haven't seen her be this physical in a movie since like Baby.
God, geez, Baby.
And I use Baby Boom as like a reference throughout this movie because I think it is a very underappreciated movie. It still 100% holds up. The story of Baby Boom is like it's almost more relevant now than it was then, post-pandemic. And are we going to work from home? And like, do we work to live or live to work? And like,
who was the director of that again?
Charles Shire.
Oh, who is it?
I think it's Charles Shire, wasn't it?
It was Charles. Yes, I think. Yeah, because I think I had him on the show. No, I didn't think I had him on the show. And I was asking him about this. Like, is it Charles? I think it was. Yes. And he's a master. He was an absolute.
What she does physically in that movie, like her like freak out breakdown at the well when the well runs dry, the way she kisses Sam Shepard, like all of those were touch points for me in making this movie, and we talked a lot about it, and I just loved it. I love all of Diane's stuff, but I think what she did physically in Baby Boom was really like where we were looking to sort of land with Mack and Rita.
And what was it? You know, as a director, we always come up with that day that the whole world's coming down crashing around us. And I know that you could argue that every day's that. But there's always that one day that has
called 2022.
Exactly. Was there a day that sticks out in your mind that the whole world was coming crashing down around you and you felt like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? What was that, and how did you overcome it?
The day that we were shooting out at the beach, the big fire stuff.
Yeah.
Claire Power Summit. Shooting, and all of a sudden, I'm so sorry. I think like the army is landing nearby.
It's fine. It's all good.
We were shooting at the beach. We had this big fire stunt, and we're getting going, and it's a gorgeous day. I'm like so psyched. The weather's great. And all of a sudden, like as we're like gearing up for the fire stuff, like the wind starts to pick up, and LA ended up having like gale force winds that day.
Oh my God,
and you'll watch, like there's hair blowing everywhere. We ended up having to CGI like most of the fire. We could not get anything to frigging light. It was the most infuriating. Finally, Diane was just like, the second there's fire, I'm getting on stage. I was like, yes, you're going to just go and we're going to do it. And thankfully I had Nicole Byer there, who is like just a comedic genius. And I could just rely on her to like be clutch. Like you just need, in moments like that, you need people to deliver. And so we end up like barely pulling out that fire thing. We go to turn the cameras around so we can get her walking through the event. And the wind, I want to say it was like 40 miles an hour gale force wind, picks up all of the tents and get lifted like it's Wizard of Oz and get sent to fucking Malibu. Like they went so far, and we were just like, we got to call it. Like obviously we cannot shoot. We don't have a set anymore.
God doesn't want you to shoot. It's basically
God does not want us to finish this day. So we like go home and we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So we're looking at the schedule, working it out with the AD, and the only day that we can like fit in a half day reshoot is the day that we are shooting Diane coming out of the pod.
Mm-hmm. The first time? Yeah, the first time.
Diane's work hours are 12 hours portal to portal. Hair and makeup, all of that requires some time. 2 locations, Santa Monica to downtown.
Oh,
And a massive, massive wardrobe change in between, and a hair change because she has the longer hair there, meant that I had 20 minutes to shoot Diane coming out of the pod.
wow.
It was like only the most important.
Basically the most important shot.
But then also the Marie Claire thing is important because then that's like production value, right? Like we need the feel of this big, huge event. We need Diane like working the vendors. We're shooting her coming through and doing the whole thing. There was no compromise. You just had to do it. It was one of those things where I was like, oh my God. Oh my God.
And you know what? And I love these kinds of stories. That's why I always ask that question, because I love to demystify for young filmmakers coming up that they're like, oh, you've got Diane Keaton. This is a big budget. This is this and that. Everything runs smoothly.
Yeah.
No.
Shit goes wrong at every level. Like, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what studio is making your movie. I don't care if you're just making it with friends. Something is going to always go wrong, and you just have to be ready for it.
Now, when is this film available?
August 12th in theaters. Yes, August 12th. That's Friday. August 12th in theaters, and then we'll be PVOD in September, and then on Hulu in December.
That's so awesome. I can't wait for the world to see this film. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all of my guests. Okay. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
Make stuff with your friends. Get good.
Work and just hustle.
Work, hustle, make it.
What is the lesson? What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
I think it is. You got to put that ego on the shelf and do the work.
It is something that they don't talk about in film school.
Like you gotta. That is. I think. Listen. I listen to Oprah and Deepak, and ego is a daily struggle for everyone. But it is also like worst enemy. Like your ego does you no favors.
But you know what? The funny thing is that in our business, it's even more prevalent because not everybody has a group of people or an entire industry telling you you're the best. Yeah. You're awesome. It's difficult to handle that at any level.
Well, and I think that it gets confused. Ego gets confused with confidence, right? Like you can have confidence in your skills and your abilities, but not be led by your ego.
Right. Exactly. Like I'm too good for that. I remember when I first started directing, I went out as a commercial director and I'd been editing. I was a top editor in South Florida. I was making tons of cash. And then as soon as I made my demo reel, I just said, I'm no longer an editor. I'm just going to send and then I got calls. Hey, can you work? No, I don't edit anymore. I am now a director. Mind you, wasn't directing.
Hard to call yourself a director when you're not actually doing it.
Exactly. So it was just don't worry. I always tell people, don't worry. The universe has a way of just slapping. Yeah. Just a little nudge here and there.
Knocking your head just a little bit.
And last question, 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Tootsie.
That's so brilliant. Oh.
Big Lebowski.
Another brilliant one.
And I will say Baby Boom.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Oh, I had one other question I forgot to ask you. What did you learn from your biggest failure? That
there's always there's going to be a tomorrow. The world doesn't stop making movies. The world doesn't stop making TV shows. It doesn't end on the last project. The business keeps going. And no one gives as much shit about you as you do. Like no one cares.
You spend how many hours of your life was wasted thinking about what other people thought of you, and as you've gotten older, you go like, they didn't think a bit about me. They have their own crap. Their own crap they're dealing with. Yes. How egocentric are we to think like when we walk in a room, what are they thinking? How I look? No, they're just thinking.
Everyone cares. No one cares. They're all worried about themselves.
Right, and their own crap.
It's like cut everyone else some grace. Everyone's doing their best.
Yeah, exactly. There's no question. We're all doing our best, and we're all just trying to make it through this life's journey. And in this business is, whoosh, it's brutal.
Cut yourself some grace, cut everyone else some grace, and try and enjoy it as much as you can.
Katie, it has been an absolute pleasure and honor talking to you. So much fun. Thank you so much for dropping your knowledge bombs on the tribe. I appreciate you very, very much. And best of luck. I can't wait to see your next project. So thank you again.
Me too. All right. I'll talk to you soon.